He had been waiting outside that door for 7 days, and on the 7th night, something on the other side finally answered. At 2:17 in the morning, the underground medical corridor at Camp Pendleton feels colder than the desert before dawn. Fluorescent lights hum above polished gray floors. The air smells of antiseptic, steel, and burnt coffee left too long in a paper cup. At the far end of the hallway, beneath a red security light, a white German shepherd lies facing a sealed door marked Classified Medical Unit. His name is Atlas. 6 years old. 90 pounds of disciplined muscle, pale fur, and patient silence. Dust has gathered along his back where the vents breathe dry air across the floor. His water bowl sits untouched beside the wall. A folded blanket rests 3 feet behind him, exactly where Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Reed left it hours ago. Atlas has not used it. He has not moved farther than the length of his own body since the door closed 7 days earlier. 2 Marines stand watch near the elevator. Neither speaks above a whisper anymore. They have learned that silence belongs to Atlas now. Corporal Owen Price approaches slowly, holding a leash and a small paper tray of warmed chicken. He is 22, young enough to believe every problem has a proper command. He kneels several feet away. "Come on, boy," he says softly. "You need to eat." Atlas does not look at the food. His amber eyes remain fixed on the narrow seam beneath the steel door. Owen sets the tray down. The smell rises through the corridor, warm and familiar, but Atlas only lowers his head until one ear rests against the floor. Owen reaches for the silver collar around his neck. Atlas does not growl. He does not bare his teeth. He simply shifts his weight and places one white paw over the collar, calm as a soldier protecting a flag. Owen freezes. Marcus watches from the wall, arms folded across his chest. He is a broad-shouldered black Marine in his early 40s, with tired eyes and a voice worn smooth by years of giving orders in hard places. "Leave him," Marcus says. Owen glances back. "Sir, he has been here a week." "I know. The colonel wants him moved to the K9 unit before morning." Marcus looks at Atlas. "The colonel has wanted that every morning." Owen lowers his voice. "He cannot stay here forever." Marcus does not answer right away. The red light above the door paints a thin crimson line across Atlas's white coat. "He is not staying forever," Marcus says at last. "He is waiting." Owen studies the dog, then the door. "For what?" Marcus's gaze hardens, though not with anger. "That is the question, isn't it?" The clock on the wall clicks forward 1 minute. Somewhere behind the sealed room, a machine changes rhythm. Atlas lifts his head. His ears rise. Owen hears nothing unusual, only the distant ventilation system and the faint rattle of an ice machine down the hall. Atlas hears something else. He stands so quickly the tray slides across the floor. His body goes still, every line of him drawn toward the door. Then he takes 1 step forward and presses his nose against the cold metal. Marcus straightens. "Atlas." The dog does not turn. His breath clouds the polished surface. For 7 days he has watched doctors enter through a side access hall. For 7 days he has ignored uniforms, whistles, food, sleep, and every command except the one no one remembers giving him. "Hold fast. Stay until your people come home." Owen reaches for the radio clipped to his shoulder, but Marcus raises a hand. "Wait." The corridor falls quiet again. 1 second passes. Then another. Atlas's tail, motionless for 7 days, moves once against the floor. A soft sweep. Barely a sound. From behind the classified door comes a faint knock. 3 taps. Slow. Uneven. Deliberate. Atlas shudders from nose to tail. His claws touch the floor with a light metallic click as he leans closer. Owen's face loses its certainty. "Did you hear that?" Marcus is already moving toward the security panel. "I heard it." The red light remains steady. No alarm sounds. No doctor appears. The door stays closed. Atlas lifts 1 paw and strikes the steel once, then twice, then a 3rd time, matching the rhythm from inside. Silence follows. Marcus looks down at him, and for the first time in a week, he understands that Atlas has not been guarding the room. He has been listening for a man the rest of the base was afraid to hope for. Then, from the other side of the door, the 3 knocks come again. The second set of knocks fades into the sealed room, leaving the corridor so quiet that Marcus can hear the faint electric buzz inside the security panel. Atlas keeps 1 paw raised against the steel. His ears remain forward. His breathing is controlled, but the muscles beneath his white coat tremble with a hope too large for his body to hide. Corporal Owen Price stares at the door as though it has changed shape. "Someone is awake in there," he whispers. Marcus does not answer. He presses the call button beside the access panel. A small amber light flashes, then goes dark. No voice responds. He tries again. "Medical control. This is Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Reed at the East Corridor entrance. We heard a signal from inside the restricted unit." Static answers first. Then a tired voice comes through the speaker. "Remain where you are. Do not attempt entry." Was that Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks? Marcus asks. The pause lasts 1 second too long. "Remain where you are," the voice repeats. The connection ends. Owen looks toward the elevator. They know something. Marcus lowers his hand from the panel. They have known something for 7 days. Atlas settles back onto his front legs, but he no longer looks exhausted. A different energy runs through him now. Alert, certain, alive. His nose traces the seam beneath the door, testing every breath of air that escapes. Then he lowers one ear to the floor again. Owen watches him closely. He does that every night. Marcus turns. "What?" "Around 2 in the morning. Sometimes a little later. I thought he was listening to the pipes." Marcus looks at the clock, then at Atlas. "How many nights?" "Every night I have been on watch." Marcus studies the dog with new attention. During daylight, Atlas lies still while doctors pass through the side hall. At night, when the bass quiets and the machines become easier to hear, he presses his head to the floor. Not sleeping. Listening. Waiting for something beneath the mechanical hum. Marcus crouches beside him but does not touch the collar. "You heard him before we did. Did you not?" Atlas blinks once. The elevator doors open behind them. Colonel Rebecca Hayes steps into the corridor with 2 military police officers. She is in her late 40s, composed and sharp-eyed, her uniform exact even at this hour. She takes in the food tray, the leash, the dog at the door, and Marcus standing beside him. "I gave an order for Atlas to be transferred before midnight," she says. "He refused to move, ma'am," Owen replies. "Dogs do not refuse orders, Corporal. Handlers fail to give them correctly." Marcus rises. "With respect, Colonel, 5 handlers have tried. Then use the transport harness." Atlas turns his head toward her voice, calm but unmoved. Colonel Hayes steps closer. "This corridor is not a kennel." Marcus meets her gaze. "No, ma'am. It is a post." Her expression tightens. "That dog has no assigned post here." Before Marcus can answer, Atlas returns his ear to the floor. The colonel notices. For several seconds, everyone watches him. A distant monitor sounds once behind the wall. Atlas lifts his head. His tail makes the same small movement as before. Colonel Hayes looks toward the sealed door. "What happened?" Marcus tells her about the 3 knocks. He does not embellish. He does not need to. Owen confirms every detail. The colonel listens without interruption, then presses her identification card to the panel. The light turns blue, but the lock does not release. A message appears across the narrow screen. "Access suspended by medical command." Her jaw hardens. "Who suspended my clearance?" No one answers from the speaker. She reaches for her radio, steps several yards away, and speaks in a low voice. Atlas does not watch her. The leash remains on the floor beside him. Owen bends to pick it up, then stops. "He is not trying to disobey us," he says quietly. Marcus looks at the young Marine. "No, then why will he not leave?" Marcus glances at the untouched chicken, the folded blanket, and the worn patch of floor beneath Atlas's chest. "Because every time we thought he was mourning, he was hearing proof." Owen looks again at the dog, and something in his face softens. The animal before him is not confused. He is not lost in grief. He has been carrying a certainty no human in the corridor was willing to hold. Colonel Hayes returns. The transfer order stands. At 0600, the canine unit will take him. Marcus draws a slow breath. "Ma'am, give him until sunrise." "On what basis?" From behind the door comes a faint sound, not a knock this time, but a soft scrape against metal. Atlas rises before anyone else reacts. He places his nose to the seam and releases a low, trembling breath. Colonel Hayes goes still. Marcus watches her eyes move from the door to the white dog standing beneath the red light. "On his basis," Marcus says. For the first time since entering the corridor, the colonel does not repeat her order. Colonel Hayes remains silent as the faint scrape disappears behind the sealed door. The corridor returns to its low mechanical hum, but nothing feels ordinary now. Atlas stands beneath the red light, white fur glowing against the gray floor, his amber eyes fixed on the place where sound had traveled through steel. Marcus watches the colonel study him. She has commanded men through storms, losses, and long nights when every decision carried weight. But this is different. There is no report to read, no map to consult, only a dog who seems to know what the rest of them do not. Sunrise, she says at last. He stays until sunrise. Owen releases a breath he did not realize he was holding. Marcus gives a small nod. Atlas does not move. The colonel turns toward the elevator, then pauses. Gunnery Sergeant Reed, come with me. Marcus looks down at Atlas. I will be back. The dog's left ear shifts at the sound of his voice, but his gaze remains on the door. Marcus follows Colonel Hayes into a quiet briefing room one level above. The lights are dim, and the windows show only darkness over the base. On the table lies a silver collar, a folded map, and a sealed personnel file stamped with restricted markings. Marcus stops when he sees the collar. That belongs to Atlas. It did, Colonel Hayes says. She picks it up carefully. The metal tag bears two engraved words. Hold fast. Marcus runs his thumb across the worn edge. He has seen those words before, but never understood why Isaiah chose them. Staff Sergeant Brooks had this made after Atlas completed advanced training, the colonel says. The phrase was not an official command. Marcus looks up. Then what was it? Something between them. Her voice lowers. Brooks used it when Atlas needed to remain in place while he went back for someone. The room grows still around that sentence. Marcus remembers Isaiah on the training field 3 years earlier, tall and broad-shouldered beneath the California sun, his deep brown skin shining with sweat as Atlas circled him in a blur of white fur. Isaiah never shouted unless distance demanded it. He spoke to the dog as if every word mattered. Easy, he would say. Watch me. Atlas always did. He watched Isaiah's hands, shoulders, breath, even the smallest change in his eyes. Other handlers trained obedience. Isaiah built trust. Marcus had once asked why he treated a dog like a partner. Isaiah had smiled and answered, because he listens like one. The memory returns with such clarity that Marcus can almost smell the dry grass and ocean wind drifting across the field. Atlas had been younger then, leaner, his paws too large for his frame. During one exercise, a training alarm sounded from behind a storage building. Every dog on the field reacted. Atlas looked only at Isaiah. Isaiah raised 2 fingers, then lowered his palm. Hold fast. Atlas sat. He did not move when vehicles passed, when Marines called, or when the wind carried unfamiliar scents across the yard. He waited until Isaiah returned and touched the silver tag beneath his chin. That is my boy, Isaiah whispered. It was not praise for obedience. It was gratitude for faith. Colonel Hayes opens the sealed file, but turns it so Marcus cannot read the contents. 7 nights ago, Atlas came back through the south gate alone. Marcus nods. Everyone on base remembers the sight. The white K-9 moving through pre-dawn fog, exhausted but steady, carrying a small tracking device secured beneath his collar. He led recovery teams to a location nearly 18 miles from the original search area. She continues. Without him, they would not have found Brooks in time. Marcus looks at the collar in his hand. Then Isaiah sent him home. That is what the report suggests. No, Marcus says softly. Isaiah gave him the command. Colonel Hayes studies him. Marcus can see it now. Isaiah kneeling beside Atlas in that distant, hidden place. Removing the collar. Attaching the tracker. Forcing his own voice to remain calm. Home, Atlas. Hold fast. The dog would have wanted to stay. He would have resisted every instinct that told him not to leave. But trust had carried him across 18 miles of darkness. He had obeyed because Isaiah had taught him that waiting could also be a form of rescue. Marcus closes his fingers around the silver tag. Atlas did not abandon him, he says. He completed the first half of the order. The colonel's eyes shift toward the floor below them, toward the sealed room and the dog still standing outside it. And now, Marcus sets the collar gently on the table. Now he is waiting for Isaiah to complete the second half. Down in the corridor, Atlas lifts his head before the elevator doors open. He hears Marcus's footsteps approaching, but he does not turn. Behind the steel door, 3 slow taps begin again, and this time Atlas answers before any human can. The knocks stop as suddenly as they began, but Atlas remains standing, every muscle awake. Marcus steps out of the elevator with Colonel Hayes beside him, and the white K9 turns only long enough to see them before facing the door again. The silver tag hangs from Marcus's hand. When Atlas notices it, his ears lower for a moment. Not fear. Recognition. Marcus kneels and holds the collar where the dog can smell it. "He trusted you with this," he says. Atlas leans forward, touches the tag with his nose, then looks back toward the sealed room. Colonel Hayes watches the exchange in silence. The red light above the door reflects in her eyes. "Put it back on him," she says. Marcus fastens the collar around Atlas's neck. The metal settles beneath the thick white fur with a soft click. Hold fast rests against his chest again. Almost at once, Atlas lowers himself to the floor. Not because he is tired, but because the command has been returned to him. Owen stands near the wall, still holding the untouched leash. "What happened out there?" he asks. Colonel Hayes looks at Marcus, then at the door. "Only what you need to know," she says. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks and Atlas were assigned to a restricted communications site east of the training range. The location was not listed on any public schedule. Their team was sent to verify an emergency signal before a storm moved in. Her voice remains controlled, but the room beneath her words feels heavy. The signal led them farther into the desert than expected. Radio contact became unreliable. Visibility dropped. Brooks found a young Marine separated from the rest of the group and stayed behind to guide him toward cover. Owen looks down at Atlas. "And the dog?" Atlas stayed with Brooks until Brooks gave him the tracker and sent him back. Marcus can see the journey in his mind. 18 miles of open ground under a sky without stars. Sand carried low by the wind. The scent of salt from the distant coast mixing with dust and dry brush. Atlas moving alone, not because he had forgotten Isaiah, but because every step away was part of returning to him. Colonel Hayes continues. Atlas reached the south gate before dawn. He was dehydrated, exhausted, and still carrying the locator. He would not enter the kennel. He led the recovery team back to the site. Owen's fingers tightened around the leash. Did they find Brooks there? They found him alive. The words move through the corridor like warm air. Atlas raises his head at the sound of Isaiah's name. He was transported here under restricted medical protection, the colonel says. No information was released because the operation remains classified. Owen looks toward the door. Then why has no one told the dog? Marcus answers before the colonel can. Someone did. Owen looks confused. Marcus points to the collar. Isaiah did, when he told him to hold fast. The clock reads 3:04 in the morning. Outside, the base is still wrapped in darkness. Inside the corridor, the silence feels less empty now. It feels occupied by memory. Marcus sits on the floor beside Atlas. "I remember the day they first met," he says. Owen turns toward him. Even Colonel Hayes does not. "Stop him." Atlas had been transferred from a training center in Arizona. He was too quiet for some handlers. Too observant. They thought he lacked drive because he did not rush toward every command. Marcus smiles faintly. Isaiah walked into the yard, sat down in the dust, and waited. Owen asks, "For how long?" "Nearly an hour." He did not call him. Not once. Marcus looks at Atlas. Finally, Atlas crossed the yard and sat beside him. Isaiah said, "A good partner chooses the silence he trusts." From that day on, they worked as one. Atlas's tail touches the floor once. Marcus reaches out, but stops before touching him. This is not a moment to interrupt. The dog is somewhere between the corridor and the desert, between the command he obeyed and the man who has not yet returned. Colonel Hayes checks the time. Medical command will update us at 4. And if they do not? Marcus asks. Then I will update myself. There is steel in her voice now, but not the cold kind. The kind that protects. A soft chime comes from the panel beside the door. Everyone turns. The red light flickers, then changes to amber. Atlas rises instantly. A speaker clicks on, and a calm male voice fills the hallway. "Colonel Hayes, this is Captain Daniel Mercer. Staff Sergeant Brooks has shown a response to external sound." Marcus looks at Atlas. Owen forgets to breathe. "What kind of response?" the colonel asks. His heart rate changes when the dog taps the door. The speaker goes quiet for a second. "We would like to try something." A narrow slot near the base of the door opens 2 inches. Cool air slips into the hallway carrying antiseptic, linen, and beneath it, something faint but unmistakable. Atlas moves forward slowly. He lowers his nose to the opening. His eyes close. A tremor runs through his body. Then, from inside the room, a weak voice breathes one word. Atlas. The dog does not bark. He presses his forehead against the steel and releases a sound so soft it is almost a prayer. The sound Atlas makes is not a bark, not a whine, but something held between relief and disbelief. It rises from deep in his chest and disappears into the narrow opening beneath the door. Marcus lowers his eyes. Owen turns away for a moment, pretending to study the wall. Colonel Hayes stands perfectly still, but the muscles in her jaw soften. Inside the room, Captain Daniel Mercer speaks in a calm voice. Staff Sergeant Brooks, can you hear me? There is a pause. A monitor sounds softly in the distance. Then Isaiah answers, weaker than before. Dog. Atlas presses closer to the opening. His nose moves as he searches the stream of air for the scent he has carried in memory for 7 days. Antiseptic. Clean linen. Plastic tubing. Underneath it all, Isaiah. Faint. Tired, but real. Atlas lowers himself until his chest touches the floor. His white paws stretch toward the gap, stopping just short of the other side. Marcus crouches behind him. He is here, Isaiah, he says. He never left. The speaker remains silent, but from behind the door comes a slow tapping sound. 3 touches against metal. Atlas answers with 3 light strikes of his claws. The rhythm is steadier now. Captain Mercer speaks again. His heart rate is stabilizing. Colonel Hayes steps toward the panel. Open the door. We cannot do that yet, Colonel. You just heard him respond. I did, but Staff Sergeant Brooks is still under close observation. Too much stimulation could set back the progress we have made. Hayes looks at Atlas, then at the narrow slot. The dog is not stimulation. He is orientation. The line goes quiet. Marcus glances at her with quiet respect. For 7 days, regulations have held the corridor together. Now something older than regulation is asking to be recognized. Captain Mercer exhales through the speaker. Give me 10 minutes. The slot closes with a soft mechanical click. Atlas remains where he is, nose against the seam. He does not panic. He has heard the voice. That is enough to renew the promise. Marcus sits beside him again. You were right, Owen says. About what? He was not grieving. Marcus looks at the silver tag resting against Atlas's chest. Grief and faith can live in the same place. Owen lowers the leash and folds it neatly beside the wall. I kept trying to take him away. You were following orders. So was he. The first hint of dawn begins to pale the small window at the far end of the corridor. The darkness outside shifts from black to deep blue. Somewhere above them, the base is beginning to wake. Trucks start in distant lots. A flag detail crosses an empty courtyard. Coffee brews in duty offices. Yet in the underground hallway, time still belongs to Atlas. The dog closes his eyes for several seconds, but his ears remain alert. Marcus reaches into his pocket and removes a small piece of dried chicken. He places it on the floor near Atlas's paw. This time, Atlas smells it. He looks toward the door, then back at Marcus. He needs you strong, Marcus says. Atlas takes the food carefully. Owen smiles, though his eyes shine. That is the first thing he has eaten since midnight. Marcus offers another piece. Atlas accepts it without leaving the door. Colonel Hayes watches from several feet away. How long did Brooks work with him? She asks. 3 years, Marcus says. Longer, if you count the months Isaiah spent visiting the training center before the transfer was approved. Why this dog? Owen asks. Marcus remembers the story Isaiah once told him. Atlas had been passed over because his pale coat made him stand out, and because he studied every handler before accepting a command. Some called him difficult. Isaiah called him careful. Because Atlas did not give trust cheaply, Marcus says. Isaiah respected that. The panel beside the door chimes again. The amber light turns white. Atlas rises before Captain Mercer speaks. We are going to open the inner observation shade. The main door will remain closed. A rectangular pane in the upper half of the steel door slowly clears from dark glass to transparent. The room beyond is dim and washed in soft blue light. Medical equipment stands near the bed, quiet and orderly. Isaiah Brooks lies beneath a white blanket, his face thinner than Marcus remembers, his deep brown skin pale under the cool glow. A small bandage rests near his right temple. His eyes are closed. Atlas stands on his hind legs and places both front paws against the lower part of the door. The movement makes no sound. Then Isaiah turns his head. Slowly, as though traveling a great distance, he opens his eyes. At first his gaze drifts without focus. Captain Mercer says something beside him, but Isaiah does not respond. Atlas breathes against the glass. A small circle of mist appears. Isaiah's eyes move toward it. He sees the white dog. His lips part. Atlas's tail begins to move, once, twice, then faster, sweeping against the floor like a quiet drumbeat. Isaiah raises one hand from the blanket. His fingers tremble, but he manages the old signal. 2 fingers lifted. Palm lowered. Hold fast. Atlas becomes still. Every Marine in the corridor recognizes the command now, though it belongs only to the 2 of them. Isaiah looks at the dog, and the faintest smile reaches his face. Behind the glass, his hand falls back to the blanket. Captain Mercer checks the monitor, then looks toward the door. "Colonel," he says through the speaker, his voice no longer purely clinical. "I think he knows exactly where he is." Atlas lowers his paws and sits. For the first time in 7 days, he is not watching an empty door. He is watching Isaiah watch him back. The white light above the door remains steady as dawn gathers beyond the small window at the end of the corridor. Atlas sits with perfect stillness, his amber eyes locked on Isaiah through the glass. The old command holds him in place, but his tail continues to move against the floor, slow and measured, as if counting every breath on the other side. Isaiah watches him from the bed. The effort costs him. His eyelids lower, then rise again. Captain Daniel Mercer adjusts the blanket near his shoulder and studies the monitor beside him. "Do not push yourself," he says. Isaiah's gaze does not leave Atlas. His voice is rough when he speaks. "How long?" Mercer glances toward the door. 7 days. Isaiah closes his eyes. For one quiet second, the room seems to hold more weight than steel should carry. He waited. Mercer looks through the glass at the white dog sitting in the corridor. He refused to leave. Isaiah opens his eyes again, and something inside them breaks without falling apart. Marcus sees it from the hallway. He has seen Marines endure long separations, hard news, and the strange silence that follows survival. But this is different. Isaiah is not looking at Atlas like a handler seeing his dog. He is looking at him like a man seeing the part of himself that kept moving when he could not. Colonel Hayes steps closer to the speaker. "Staff Sergeant Brooks, Medical Command needs you to rest." Isaiah turns his head slightly toward her voice. "Ma'am." Even weakened, the word carries discipline. "Your condition is stable," she says. "That is all you need to focus on." Isaiah looks back at Atlas. "No, ma'am." Hayes pauses. "What do you need?" His fingers move weakly against the blanket. 2 taps, then a third. Atlas answers against the floor. Isaiah's mouth lifts at one corner. "Need him to know." Mercer leans closer. "Know what?" Isaiah draws a careful breath. He did good. Atlas cannot hear every word through the glass, but he hears the tone. His ears lower. His head tilts. Marcus kneels beside him and places a hand near, but not on, the silver collar. "You hear him, boy." Atlas releases a soft breath and lowers his chest to the floor. For the first time since returning to the base, he allows his chin to rest between his paws. Not surrender. Relief. Owen watches from several feet away. The folded blanket still lies unused near the wall, but the untouched tray is now empty except for a few crumbs. "He is finally resting," Owen says. Marcus nods. Because Isaiah told him the watch is almost over. Inside the room, Mercer dims one of the lights. Isaiah's eyes begin to close. Before sleep takes him, he lifts 2 fingers once more. "Hold fast." Atlas remains still. Minutes pass. The base wakes fully above them. Footsteps travel through distant halls. Doors open. Radios murmur. The first sun reaches through the narrow window and lays a pale strip of gold across the floor, stopping just short of Atlas's paws. Colonel Hayes checks her watch. At 0800, "I want a full medical briefing." Mercer responds through the speaker. "Understood." "And Captain," she adds, "prepare a controlled reunion." Marcus looks up. Owen does too. Mercer studies Isaiah, then Atlas. "That may be several hours away. Then we will wait several hours." Hayes's voice softens, though only slightly. He has already waited 7 days. The speaker clicks off. Atlas raises his head at the change in sound. Marcus looks through the glass. Isaiah is asleep now, his breathing more even. He is coming back, Marcus says quietly. Owen looks at the dog. Do you think Atlas understands? Marcus smiles without humor. I think Atlas understood before any of us. A nurse enters the room behind the glass carrying a small cloth bag. She speaks with Mercer, then removes something from inside. A worn piece of tan fabric. Isaiah's field scarf. Mercer holds it up toward the window, asking silent permission. Colonel Hayes nods. A small transfer drawer opens near the base of the door. The scarf slides through. Atlas rises and approaches. He smells it once, then again, slower. The scent takes him somewhere beyond the corridor. Dry wind. Warm earth. Isaiah's hand on his neck. The low voice that never wasted words. Atlas closes his eyes and presses his nose into the fabric. Marcus expects him to carry it back to his place, but instead Atlas turns and walks 3 feet away from the door. Everyone notices. He circles once over the folded blanket, then lowers himself onto it, Isaiah's scarf beneath his chin. Owen looks at Marcus in surprise. That is the farthest he has moved. Marcus watches the dog settle beneath the morning light, because now he knows the door is not empty. Atlas's eyes remain open, fixed on Isaiah through the glass. The silver tag rests against the scarf. Hold fast. The words no longer sound like an order. They sound like a promise nearing its end. Then a second elevator opens at the far end of the corridor. Several Marines step out in dress uniforms, quiet and solemn. Colonel Hayes turns toward them. Why are they here? The senior Marine at the front removes his cap and looks through the glass at Isaiah, then down at Atlas. Word reached the unit, he says. They ask permission to be present when Staff Sergeant Brooks comes through that door. Hayes looks along the growing line of Marines. Who authorized this? The senior Marine meets her eyes. No one, ma'am. He turns toward Atlas. They came because they know who brought him home. Colonel Hayes studies. The Marines standing beyond the elevator. Some wear dress uniforms. Others have come straight from morning duty, their sleeves still carrying the faint dust of the training grounds. No one speaks. They form a quiet line along the corridor, leaving the center clear. Atlas lifts his head from Isaiah's scarf and watches them arrive one by one. He recognizes several faces. Men who had worked beside Isaiah. Men who had trusted the White K-9 to read a room before they entered it. Men who had spent 7 days hearing only fragments of the truth. Marcus rises from the floor. This corridor is restricted, he says, though there is no force behind the words. The senior Marine nods. Then we will stand where we are allowed. Colonel Hayes looks toward the sealed room. Isaiah is still asleep behind the glass. Captain Mercer checks the monitors, then glances at the growing line outside. The speaker clicks on. Colonel, I need the hallway kept calm. It will be, she says. No unnecessary movement. No raised voices. Mercer looks again at the Marines. Understood. The speaker goes quiet. Owen steps closer to Marcus. Do they all know Atlas brought him back? They know enough, Marcus says. Sometimes enough is all a unit needs. Another Marine joins the line. Then another. Boots settle into place against the polished floor. The scent of starch, leather, coffee, and morning air slowly replaces the cold emptiness that had lived there through the night. Atlas watches each arrival, but he does not leave the blanket. Isaiah's scarf remains beneath his chin. His eyes return again and again to the glass. At 8:12 in the morning, Captain Mercer enters the corridor through a side access door. He removes his medical cap and approaches Colonel Hayes. Staff Sergeant Brooks is awake, he says. Atlas stands before anyone else reacts. Mercer notices. His condition has improved, but he is weak. We are moving him to a recovery room on this level. He will be in a wheelchair for the transfer. Marcus asks, can Atlas approach him? Mercer looks down at the dog. Slowly. No jumping. No sudden pressure. Owen almost smiles. You may want to tell Atlas that yourself. Mercer kneels several feet away. Atlas. The dog looks at him. You will see him soon. Atlas's ears rise. Mercer glances at Marcus. Does he understand that? Marcus looks toward the door. He understands more than we have said all week. The Marines straighten as a soft tone sounds above the sealed entrance. The white light changes to blue. A lock releases somewhere inside the wall. Atlas takes one step forward, then stops. His body trembles, but he holds his place. Marcus sees the conflict in him. Every instinct says move. Every memory says wait for the command. Colonel Hayes turns to the assembled Marines. Staff Sergeant Brooks, is being transferred for continued recovery. This is not a ceremony. No one answers. Her eyes move down the line. But what happened beyond this door belongs to everyone who believes no Marine should be left behind. The words settle over them. She looks at Atlas. And sometimes the one who carries that promise home does not wear a uniform. The door begins to open. Cool air rolls into the corridor, carrying the clean scent Atlas has guarded for 7 days. Captain Mercer steps through first. Behind him, a nurse guides a wheelchair forward. Isaiah Brooks sits beneath a dark blue blanket, thinner than before, his shoulders wrapped in a soft recovery jacket. His deep brown skin looks warmer in the daylight. A narrow bandage remains near his right temple. His hands rest on the chair, one steady, the other trembling slightly. Atlas sees him. The entire corridor disappears from the dog's attention. The Marines, the lights, the open elevator, the morning sounds above them. All of it falls away. There is only Isaiah. Atlas takes one step, then another. He stops 6 feet from the wheelchair. Isaiah looks at him with tired eyes full of recognition. His lips move, but no sound comes at first. Atlas waits. Isaiah raises 2 fingers. His palm lowers. Hold fast. Atlas freezes. A tear moves down Isaiah's cheek, but he does not look away. Good boy, he whispers. The words are weak, yet Atlas hears them. His tail begins to sweep against the floor. Isaiah's hand shifts from the signal to an open palm. Come home. The command breaks the last thread of distance. Atlas crosses the floor slowly at first, then faster, stopping just before the wheelchair. He lowers his head beneath Isaiah's hand. Isaiah touches the white fur between his ears. His fingers shake as they find the silver collar. Hold fast rests beneath his thumb. Atlas presses his forehead gently against Isaiah's chest. No one in the corridor moves. Isaiah bends over him as far as he can and wraps one arm around his neck. You found me, he says. Atlas closes his eyes. Marcus looks down. Owen swallows hard. Captain Mercer turns toward the monitors attached to the chair, but even he pauses before checking them. Colonel Hayes steps forward. She brings her heels together and raises her right hand in a salute. The senior Marine across from her follows. Then Marcus. Then Owen. One by one, every Marine in the corridor lifts a hand. The silence becomes deeper than any command. Isaiah looks up and sees them. For a moment, confusion crosses his face. Colonel Hayes holds the salute and speaks softly. For bringing one of ours home. Isaiah looks down at Atlas. The dog remains against him, still carrying the scarf, still wearing the silver promise. Isaiah raises his own hand with effort. His salute is not perfect. It does not need to be. Atlas lifts his head, watching him. Outside the narrow window, the morning sun finally reaches the far end of the corridor. Light moves across the floor, past the folded blanket, past the empty food tray, until it touches Isaiah's boots and Atlas's white paws at the same time. The salute holds for several quiet seconds, long enough for Isaiah to understand that it is not meant for rank, not for medals, and not for the sealed operation no one in the corridor is permitted to discuss. It is for the promise that survived distance, silence, and 7 long nights. Isaiah lowers his hand first. One by one, the Marines follow. The hallway seems to breathe again. Captain Mercer checks the small monitor attached to the wheelchair and gives a cautious nod. We need to move. Isaiah's hand remains buried in the thick white fur at Atlas's neck. He comes with me. Mercer glances at Colonel Hayes. She answers without hesitation. He does. Atlas walks beside the wheelchair as the nurse begins pushing it down the corridor. He keeps one shoulder close to Isaiah's knee, never touching hard enough to disturb him, never drifting more than a few inches away. The Marines step back to make room. No one reaches for the dog. No one tries to guide him. He already knows where he belongs. Owen picks up the folded blanket and Isaiah's field scarf from the floor. The blanket carries a shallow impression where Atlas finally rested. The scarf carries white hairs along one edge. He folds them together with surprising care. Marcus notices and says nothing. At the elevator, Isaiah looks over his shoulder toward the sealed door. The red light is gone now. The opening beneath it is closed. The patch of floor where Atlas waited is marked only by a water bowl, a few crumbs, and 7 days of stubborn faith no cleaning crew could ever truly erase. He stayed there the whole time? Isaiah asks. Marcus walks beside him. Day and night. Isaiah looks down at Atlas. You were supposed to go home. Atlas lifts his face toward him. Isaiah gives the smallest smile. You always did have your own definition of home. The elevator carries them one floor up to a recovery wing, washed in morning light. Wide windows overlook low hills, training fields, and the distant blue line of the Pacific. The air here smells less like steel and more like clean cotton and coffee. A nurse opens the door to a private room. Atlas enters first, checks each corner, then returns to Isaiah's side. Mercer watches the familiar routine. He is clearing the room. Marcus nods. He has done that since their first week together. Isaiah is helped from the wheelchair to a reclining chair beside the window. The movement is slow, but Atlas does not show alarm. He stands close enough for Isaiah to rest one hand on his back. When everyone else steps away, the dog finally exhales. It is a long breath, deeper than any he has taken in the corridor. His body softens under Isaiah's palm. Mission complete, Isaiah whispers. Atlas lowers his head onto Isaiah's knee. The silver tag touches the arm of the chair with a soft metallic note. Mercer begins to explain the recovery plan. Rest, short walks, careful meals, limited visitors. Isaiah listens, but his eyes remain on Atlas. Colonel Hayes stands near the foot of the bed, holding a sealed folder beneath one arm. There is one more matter, she says. Isaiah looks up. Ma'am, the official report will not include everything that happened. Understood. But the unit will know enough. She pauses. Lance Corporal Noah Bennett is alive. He was found because you stayed behind long enough to guide him toward the marker. Atlas carried the location back. Isaiah closes his eyes briefly. Relief moves across his face before discipline returns. How is Bennett? Recovering. He asked about you. Isaiah nods. Tell him he owes Atlas a steak. Marcus gives a quiet laugh. It is the first sound in the room that feels almost normal. Atlas opens one eye, as though he recognizes his name and the possibility of food. Owen steps forward with the folded scarf and blanket. These are yours, Staff Sergeant. Isaiah takes the scarf, then looks at the blanket. That his. It was supposed to be. Owen's voice is gentle. He did not use it until he heard you. Isaiah looks at the young Marine for a moment, reading the guilt still hidden there. You tried to move him. Owen straightens. Yes, Staff Sergeant. More than once. Yes. Isaiah looks down at Atlas, then back at Owen. And you still have all your fingers. That means he knew you were trying to help. Owen smiles despite himself. He was patient with me. He is patient with people who are still learning. The words land softly, without judgment. Owen places the blanket over the back of the chair. Colonel Hayes turns toward the door, signaling that the room should clear. Marcus waits until the others leave, then looks at Isaiah. You gave him hold fast. Isaiah nods. I needed him to take the tracker. He thought the command was still active. Isaiah's fingers close around the silver tag. It was. Marcus studies him. For 7 days? Isaiah looks toward the window where sunlight now warms Atlas's white coat. Until he could see I came home. Marcus leaves them alone. The room grows quiet. Outside, Marines cross the training field in orderly lines. Inside, Isaiah unties the old tag from Atlas's collar and turns it over in his hand. On the back, where the metal is worn smooth, he uses a pen from the bedside table to mark 3 small words. Waiting is service. The ink will not last forever, but that does not matter. Atlas watches him, then places one paw across Isaiah's boot. Isaiah leans back, exhausted but peaceful, and rests his hand between the dog's ears. For the first time since the mission began, neither of them is waiting for the other. For weeks later, the morning sun rises over Camp Pendleton with a softer kind of light. It touches the low hills first, then slides across the training fields, warming the pale grass and the long concrete paths between buildings. The air carries the scent of salt from the Pacific, mixed with dust, fresh coffee, and the faint oil of equipment being checked for another day. Isaiah walks slowly along the edge of the rehabilitation courtyard with a cane in his right hand. His steps are measured. Each one is deliberate, earned. Atlas moves beside him at the same pace, close enough that his white shoulder nearly brushes Isaiah's leg, but never so close that he becomes a burden. The silver tag at his collar catches the sunlight with every step. Hold fast remains engraved on one side. On the other, the inked words have begun to fade, but Isaiah still reads them whenever he touches the metal. Waiting is service. Captain Mercer watches from a bench near the clinic entrance, pretending to review a chart. Marcus stands farther down the path with 2 cups of coffee. Owen is beside him, holding a small paper bag that smells strongly of steak. "You actually brought it," Marcus says. Owen looks offended. "Staff Sergeant Brooks said Bennett owed Atlas a steak." "Bennett owed it. Bennett is still in recovery, so I am covering the debt." Marcus smiles. "That dog has better accounting than the entire supply office." Atlas hears the paper bag open and turns one ear toward it, but he does not leave Isaiah. Isaiah notices. "Go ahead," he says. Atlas looks up at him. "That is an order." The dog takes 3 steps toward Owen, then stops and looks back. Isaiah lifts 2 fingers, lowers his palm, and smiles. "Not that one. You are off duty." Atlas crosses the remaining distance and accepts a small piece of steak with careful dignity. Owen laughs. He eats like he is being inspected. "He does everything like he is being inspected," Marcus says. The quiet moment spreads through the courtyard. No ceremony. No cameras. Just Marines watching a white dog enjoy a promise kept. Isaiah reaches the end of the path and rests near a wooden bench. His breathing is heavier than he wants anyone to notice. Atlas returns immediately and sits beside him. Isaiah places one hand on the dog's back. Beneath the thick fur, the body is warm, steady, alive. "You still watching me?" he asks. Atlas leans against his knee. Isaiah looks across the courtyard toward the rehabilitation wing. A young Marine sits alone near the entrance in a wheelchair, staring at the ground. He cannot be more than 20. His name is Private Caleb Turner. Isaiah has seen him twice during therapy, always quiet, always arriving before everyone else and leaving after the hallway empties. Today, the young Marine's hands grip the wheels of the chair, but he does not move. Atlas notices him too. His ears shift. Isaiah feels the change beneath his palm. "Go on," he says softly. Atlas looks up. Isaiah nods toward Caleb. He has been waiting long enough. Atlas rises and walks across the courtyard. The young Marine sees him coming and quickly wipes his face with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. Atlas stops several feet away. He does not crowd him. He simply sits. Caleb looks around as if expecting someone to call the dog back. No one does. "Hey," he says uncertainly. Atlas lowers his head. Caleb reaches out, hesitates, then places one hand on the white fur between the dog's ears. His shoulders loosen. Something heavy leaves his breath. Atlas remains still, giving him the same patient silence Isaiah once gave a careful dog in a dusty training yard. Marcus watches from the path. "You trained him to do that?" Isaiah shakes his head. "No, then how does he know?" Isaiah looks at Caleb's hand resting on Atlas's head. He knows what waiting feels like. The answer is enough. Weeks pass, and the story of the 7 days becomes quieter, not larger. The classified details remain sealed. No newspaper prints Isaiah's name. No plaque describes the mission. The Marines who stood in the corridor do not need one. They remember the sound of 3 knocks through steel. They remember the white dog who refused food, sleep, and every command except the one built from trust. Near the rehabilitation entrance, Colonel Hayes approves a small brass plate. It does not mention medals or heroism. It reads Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks and K9 Atlas. No one left behind. Isaiah sees it for the first time on a clear afternoon. He traces the words with his thumb while Atlas sits beside him. "They put your name first in the request," Colonel Hayes says. Isaiah looks at her. Should have put his first. He cannot file a correction. Isaiah glances down. Atlas is watching a family cross the parking lot, alert but peaceful. He would if he could. Hayes allows herself a small smile and walks away. Isaiah remains beneath the sign until the sun begins to lower. Then he turns toward the path leading home. Atlas falls into step beside him. Their shadows stretch across the pavement, one tall, one four-legged, moving together through the golden light. Neither walks ahead. Neither falls behind. At the far end of the courtyard, Caleb raises a hand in farewell. Isaiah returns the gesture. Atlas pauses, looks back once, then continues. Some souls are saved by open doors. Others are saved by the one who waits outside, carrying enough faith for both of them until the way home appears.